And welcome to this week's edition of Conversations. I'm Jeff DeForrest. Very happy to have you guys with us. And it's a pleasure to introduce this week's guest. And this is a guy that, when I first started covering boxing in Miami, he's the first guy everybody talked about. He said, "You got to get to know Louis DeCubas. You got to meet Louis DeCubas. He's the man. He's doing things in boxing unprecedented." And I would say this as a boxing promoter and a guy that scouts talent for now Warriors Boxing with his partner Leon Margulies, and they've been doing it for a long time at the highest of levels. This is a guy that has brought more Latin talent into prominence than anybody. And Louis, first of all, how are you? Thanks for doing this. And
Thank
I
you.
your
Thank you for
co-host.
having me here, Jeff. You've been a long time friend of mine. We've been together a long time, and it's always a pleasure talking to you. And it just I'm here in San Juan right now doing a little business, and and ready to go for the next event. We got a lot of things going, and I'm working hard to try to create more champions. We had a big win on the 31st with Armando Resendiz. He upset Caleb Plant, he was a 20-1 dog. Started
Oh,
out close to 14-1. Nobody expected him to win, and it was a great win for the WBA interim title. It was a great upset. On the same night, we had, to me, the best middleweight in the world fought that night, Yuenlis Feliciano Hernandez. This kid that came out of Cuba. He's number one in the world, but he hasn't lost in 7 years in the amateurs or the pros. He's a great talent, 6'2", 160 pound, with an 18 and a half inch neck like Kid Gavilan. So I'm really excited about this kid. I think he's going to be the new guy in the middleweight division.
did this Latin connection begin for you with Roberto Duran? Maybe you can go back and tell us that story about your association with the great Hands of Stone, Manos de Piedra, Roberto Duran.
I actually started boxing in St. Paul, Minnesota, with the Burnett brothers, and those are the guys started me in the business. And I moved to Miami in 1984, and I met Chris Dundee, which probably was the biggest mentor I ever had. Chris and Angelo, but Chris and me would hang out together every day. I'd pick his brain. To me, probably the smartest guy I ever met. Of course, he had Muhammad Ali, and a lot of great fighters, and I learned a lot from him. And I was very fortunate, and I met. First, I started with Jose Ribalta, which gave Tyson, according to Tyson, the hardest fight of his career in 1986. Everybody expected he was going to get knocked down in 1 or 2 rounds, and it turned out to be, one of the great fights. Matter of fact, the new Tyson book, The Baddest Man. We talk about a lot about the Ribalta fight, things that happened before the fight, and throughout that fight, I became very close to Mike, one of my closest friends. And then I met a guy named Roberto Duran. Nobody wanted him. I was a young guy in boxing. He was at the end of his career. He was 35 years old. He had, just got done losing to Robbie Sims, and nobody wanted. You really wanted not of the top promoters at that time wanted to work with him because they thought he was an old guy. He was shot. And luckily, I started working with him. He's made probably the greatest impact in my life in boxing. To me, the second greatest fighter that ever lived behind Sugar Ray Robinson. And what can I tell you? I brought him back. I got him 5 wins. Started in Miami Beach Convention Center with Victor Claudio. Then we fought Juan Carlos Jimenez, which was the number 5 contender at the Night Center. And then I made a deal with Jerry Cooney. He was my partner with the fighter. We fought Ricky Stackhouse, Paul Thorne, and Jeff Lannis in Chicago. With everybody thought Duran lost that fight, and after that fight, that tape, it was BCR tapes back then. And we got it to Barclays people, and they thought Duran, they were going to give the great legend a shot. I thought he was an 8-1 dog, and he pulled a surprise. And then, of course, I got him the biggest payday of his career in 1989, the Leonard 3, where I got him $7.5 million in 1989, which was a lot of money. And basically, that's where I started with Duran. Later, we did Paciencia twice. We did Camacho, and he fought with me until the age of 45, which he beat. I thought he beat Camacho. He didn't get the decision in Atlantic City, Taj Mahal. And he was to me a great impact in my life, and we're very close. My daughter's godfather, and really enjoy that that relationship I had with Roberto.
It's funny because I don't know that many people would argue that maybe Duran was the greatest lightweight of all time. Everybody loved him at 135 when he was in his prime, and I will not forget. I actually stuck around for the walkout bout at the Orange Bowl when Alexis Arguello fought Aaron Pryor in that classic. And the walkout bout featured one Roberto Duran. Now I don't know if you were with him at the time. It sounds
I
like
was
you
not
were.
with him. He fought Jimmy Batten, I think it was, and he looked horrible that night.
Horrible, yeah. And
Horrible, 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 horrible. And I remember that, and that after those fights was where everybody thought he was done. But to me, to me, the greatest lightweight that ever lived. Some people say Benny Leonard. The old guys like Chris Dundee and Marty Cohen just say Benny Leonard was better. I don't know. I never seen a guy at 35 that could fight like that. The guys I seen live, Chavez, which is a great lightweight. I don't think he could have beat Duran. I don't think anybody could have beat Duran at 35. And for what he did to come up from not only lightweight and win the welterweight title when he beat Ray Leonard in his prime in Montreal, a young kid coming, gold medal winner for the Olympics, and he beat him in Montreal, to me was one of the greatest wins ever. And of course, and everybody gave up on him, and after the No Mas fight, but he came back and beat Davey Moore, at the Garden on June 16th on his birthday, 1983. And after that, he was back again. Then he beat Pino Cuevas. And a lot of people don't understand this, but when he fought Marvin Hagler, it was a 15-round fight. And he was ahead in all scorecards after 12. But of course, Marvin Hagler could be one of the best middleweights that ever lived. He lost a close decision. And later to come back and win the middleweight title with a guy like Barkley when he's 38 years old was, to me, one of the greatest upsets in the history of boxing. Nobody thought he had a chance. Barkley just got done knocking out Tommy Hearns, and nobody gave Duran a shot. And to me, that was probably one of the greatest wins I ever been involved with. To see a 38-year-old guy nobody gave a shot to. Trump it was a convention center. Trump was the one that a company put up the dough for it, and it was to me the greatest win I ever been involved with to this day. For me.
Was he his own worst enemy? I mean, his toughest opponent was it himself? Because he was
No, I think
notorious
Duran
for.
was the kind of guy that when Duran was short of money, nobody could beat him. I'm just telling you right now. When he was short, he only got 225,000 to fight Iran Barkley, and it beats Barkley, he gets $7.5 million. He needed to win, and he did it with Davey Moore. He needed to win. He beat Davey Moore, and that's that's Duran's story. He knows how to win when the marbles are down. And that's what makes the difference of the great ones. And Duran's right up there with all the great ones. Ray Robinson, Roberto Duran, Muhammad Ali, Henry Armstrong. The list goes on and on. But he's got to be in everybody's top 10. I know I use a lot of Bill Caton's list, Jim Jacobs. They used to have Duran number 2 behind Ray Robinson. So just happy that I was involved in his career. It's been a great honor for me, and it's always have Duran around. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, and it was quite a resurrection because I remember after that walkout bout, I think Duran won, and I was
Yeah, he
talking
looked
with
horrible.
the boxing writer Mike Katz, who recently passed
I remember
away.
Mike Katz, good friend of
Long
mine.
time. Yeah, New York Times and very prominent boxing writer. And everybody's asking Katz what this meant, and he said, another payday. And then, of course, Duran went on to win championships and be involved in any number of classics, as you mentioned. All right, you're also known as the Cuban Connection. I mean, I don't know that anybody brought more Cuban fighters to prominence than you did, Louis DeCubas. That could not have been the easiest of tasks. I mean, we've seen the stories, wild stories about how the Cuban fighters needed to defect and they would end up having 2 fights in Germany, get screwed by some promoters, somehow end up in the United States. But and we've heard the stories about baseball players and how tough it was for them. Although I guess El Duque might have come over on a yacht, but other than that, it was a hard road. So, how difficult was that? And tell us a little bit about the process, maybe some of the stories about how you were able to get fighters from Cuba and bring them. And you had a couple of greats, Joel Casamayor, underrated all time, Arislandi Lara, probably one of the guys that beat Canelo and didn't get the decision. What was that like trying to bring these fighters here, and what do you
Well,
have to do to do it?
base, basically, these fighters, they got here and they came to me, of course, because I've been working with Cuban fighters since the Morel boat left. When they came
Yeah.
over, Mauricio Rodriguez, Luis Monsote fought for the title. But and later on, the list goes on. DeForrest Hurtado, he came over and won a world title with me. Had 3 legendary fights with Whitaker. We bought Randall Bailey won the title here in San Juan, and Constantine Sue, where he had him down twice. So he had 3 great fights on HBO, DeForrest, and but most of these guys, just come here and they came looking for him. Casamayor and Garbe, they came over in 1996 and they came through Mexico. Actually, Top Rank had them at the time, but they had they got the guy that brought him Top Rank did a very bad deal with him. Eventually signed with me. And went through a little litigation with Top Rank. I won the litigation after they saw the contracts they signed, which very very ridiculous contracts. And Casamaro, what can I tell you? I was with him for his first professional fight. Had a lot of legendary fights. Fought Corrales 3 times, Castillo, Freitas, Robert Garcia, and legendary guys should definitely be in the Hall of Fame. And it was great having Casamaro. Just saw him in Vegas for the last fights I was there. He's training fighters now at Mayweather Gym, but it wasn't easy. Very difficult. They came here, and a lot of these guys, they go into a grocery store, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. They got some poverty over there, and it was difficult to come from nothing and come to the United States. And both Casamaro and Garbe, signed big contracts with Main Event where they got a lot of money. And it was difficult. And I always thought about Chris Dundee. He used to always tell me, you got to keep these guys hungry, or they got money, they don't want to fight. And that was a difficult situation with them, And I know Leon and me had our hands full there with these guys, but eventually, thank God, I sent out Casamaro to Joe Goosen in California, got him out of Miami, and that's what made the difference. He was in Los Angeles, different environment, and that's where Casamaro became the great Casamayor. But I worked with all the top guys. I went with Juan Carlos Gomez, defended his title 7 times in Germany. I brought him here, made him a heavyweight. Then, of course, the next defection came Rigondeaux, Lara, Yerkes Gamboa, and Doricos, which is fighting now. He's fighting Surdo Ramirez on the 28th of this month in Anaheim on the same card Jake Paul's fighting Chavez. And he's a 2-time world champion. He's going for three titles. And that wave after Casamaro came a lot of great talent, with Gamboa being a world champion. Eristan de Lara, which is the only fighter that can actually say he might never lost, and his last 3 losses in his record that could all controversial. Canelo fight, everybody, at least Showtime had him winning by 3 rounds. I thought he outboxed him. Paul Williams, 3 judges got suspended after they robbed Lara in Atlantic City. And Jared Hurt fight was the fight of the year, and a lot of people thought Lara wins. It's won. So Lara's had a great career. He's world champion, 41 years old. He's I got to give my son most of the credit on that. He's been working with him since for 19 years, and he's been a great champion. And it looks like he's got a big one coming up that they're working on, which pretty soon they're going to announce. But he's a great athlete. He lives a very clean life, and that's the reason he's at where he's at, at this age. And he's actually more entertaining now. He's knocking guys out because he's not moving as much now as he's older, and he sits on his punches and he's knocking guys out. So he's making a hit. So basically, it's now the Cuban fighters. You got Feliciano, Morel. One of the a guy that I brought to Minnesota, made him a household name in Minnesota, David Morel. My nephew Ned Abdul's Armory, which had a lot of legendary fights in the old days there. Robinson fought there, Joe Louis fought there, where the Minneapolis Lakers played, and I brought him there because that's my hometown, and I knew fans there, love sports. I grew up with Tony Oliva, Soylo Versailles, Camilo Pascual. My dad was a doctor. We moved there in 1966. And that's where it was my hometown, and my dad, the clinic my dad worked at's named after him now in St. Paul. So I got roots there. I love Minneapolis, and with Morrell, that proved it. He ended up selling out the place every time he fought there. People took him in, and I think that helped us a lot in making a Benavides fight with only 11 professional fights. To make a fight of that type, and on pay per view. And as everybody knows, it could to this day, it's probably the fight of the year. It was a great fight, back and forth. Everybody thought Benavides was going to run him over because he didn't have enough experience. But it was a great fight. He had Benavides hurt a couple times in the fight, but Benavides is a great champion. He's one of the best ones out there now, and and I think it's a fight that will happen again. Two young guys going, that went at it. They're both the youngest guys, the light heavyweight. Bivol is older. Big Biaf is 41 years old. So I think these guys are going to fight definitely one more time, maybe three times. Okay, because the fans want to see fights, and they got a great fight in Las Vegas, the T-Mobile Arena, on February 1st, and it was a great matchup, and it's going to happen again. But the great young ones are coming out now. Cubans are not runners anymore. Skull in Germany ran against Canelo, but the guys that I have right now are all hunters. You got Yoenis Tejas that won the WBA intertitle fight, 23-year-old kid with eight professional fights, won the world title fight. Joanlis Feliciano, the middleweight, probably could be, to me, he's the best middleweight in the world without a doubt. Okay, he's number one in the world, the WBA. He's basically, never lost in 7 years. He's already won 2 world amateur championships. When he was in Cuba, where he got $200,000 one championship bonus when he won the 1 year. Another year he got $100,000, which it's a lot of money for amateurs. And now I brought him to the United States. He's just made a hit on the Caleb Plant card, Resnick's card. He fought, Kareem Davis, which, beat Garcia. Garcia, the number one contender. We fought him. Everybody thought I was putting him in too soon because Kareem Davis is one of the best middleweights in the world. He gave Benavides a great fight. But it was really actually Feliciano won every minute and every round. He had the guy down, which Benavides couldn't knock him down. And great, he made a great hit where the guy's only got 8 professional fights. Everybody's talking about it. And I think that we could be fighting for a world title next. And Frank Sanchez done a great job. He's fought in Saudi Arabia twice, and now we're trying to make the rematch with Hallbreak. The eliminator with Hallbreak. So the Cuban fighters that came to the United States in the last few years are hunters. They're hunters. They come to fight, and you're going to see a lot of great fights with Cuban fighters. I'm in Puerto Rico now, which all the great matchups were Puerto Rico, Mexico in the past. But I think now it's going to be Cuba and Mexico because of there's so much Cuban talent. And Puerto Rico is not the same talent it used to be. Where you had every gym had 50 guys. Now the talent it's not as good. The islands had so many great champions. It's not the same as it was in the 80s and the 90s when I was in boxing.
Couple of things come to mind. Has the amateur program changed there, and is it easier for these boxers to make their way to the United States and start cashing in?
Yeah, I think the Puerto Rico used to be the hot. You go from Wilfredo Gomez. You got Wilfredo Benitez. You got Trinidad. You got Cotto, which I worked with Trinidad the first 17 fights of his career with Jamil, which was a pleasure for me. We did monthly shows in Puerto Rico. John Molina, Chino Cardona, Peladito Hernandez. The list goes on. Dennis Sanchez. The list goes on and on. Ivan Calderon, they had all the great champions. They had all the great trainers here. A couple that I was hanging out with yesterday, Felix Pintor had 19 world champions. Don Kahn worked with Alexis Arguello, Wilfredo Gomez, and had a lot of great trainers here. Older now, but the young talent, they're not picking up boxing the way they used to. I don't know, it was the amateur program or the fans are not responding the way they used to. But, I'm trying to make it happen again. I did it once before because I still think Puerto Rico it could be, a great place for talent and definitely the great fight fans.
All right, a couple of things happening contemporarily, and some quick takes on those from Louis DeCubas here, boxing promoter, and obviously a guy, as you can tell, well versed. I love your total recall of detail of fights that took place 40 years ago. It's absolutely fantastic. But all right, Manny Pacquiao is making a comeback. What do you make of that? Some rumors are out there that
Well,
Pacquiao is doing it because he
Barrios,
lost all of his
I
money somehow.
well, that's what the rumor in the industry is. I really don't know the real reason. I know he's been in politics and he's made a lot of money. So I don't know if he doesn't, if he needs the money. I really don't know that. I know he's legendary. He's one of the greatest fighters that ever lived. A lot of the boxing guys are giving him a really good shot against Barrios. I have a sentimental heart for Barrios because he started with my son his first 4-round fight, and so I know the family, and I have a sentimental feeling for him that I want him to win. But with Pacquiao, you can never count him in. They count him out. He's one of the greatest fighters that ever lived. And great ones can always have one great night, so don't count him out on that night. He's fighting on a great card. You got the rematch with Sue and Fandara. You got Joel Gonzalez against Brandon Figueroa. You got the rematch with Cruz against the last guy was a War. And I'm very blessed that my son Louis Jr. He's Al Heyman's right hand man, and we've done a lot of great things together. I think Heyman is probably one of the greatest guys ever to come into this business, definitely for the fighters. He brought more money in this business than anybody else. What can I tell you? He's made more fighters millionaire than any other guy in the history of boxing. And, with Mayweather made $1 billion with them. So what can I tell you? I've been very, very blessed to be working with PBC. Me and Leon have been working with since 2014. We've done a lot of great fights. Also was blessed to be able to be involved with the Muhammad Ali World Boxing Series, which we had a lot of fighters on it. And Warriors Boxing was running the whole show. And, we had Maria Gossip against Dorticos. I did Usyk against Gossip in Moscow. The junior welterweights, we did, Rolek. We did 18 pounds. We had Manny Rodriguez. So it's been the last few years been a very, very, very good ride for us. I think we had a lot of great fights, and we built a lot of talent. And I'm very proud to have said we signed twins, the Bonilla twins. I don't know if you have you seen them fight?
Haven't
They're
seen him.
19 years old. They were in the Mexican Olympic team, and they're first professional fight. 19 years old. I put them 10 rounds both. Now they're both world ranked. They're 4-0. They're fighting in Juarez on the fourth. And I think that those guys are going to be the 18-pounder reminds me of Salvador Sanchez. What a fighter he is. And I'm happy I have him. I think the Mexican fans are 30% of the pay-per-view audience. So I'm happy that I'm working with them. I just had Resendiz just won the world title, Mexican, which is a kid I signed out of Mexico. The great upset over Plant. So I'm looking for more Mexican fighters to sign. I think they're very, very important in the boxing because the greatest fans are the Mexican fans. So I'm recruiting more Mexican fighters than I ever have. Before I was working with Cubans, Puerto Ricans, but I worked with Russians, Gossip, a lot of Polish, Ladarczyk, Pompera. We did a lot of shows in Chicago, and which the Polish fans would, we did the show at Comiskey Comiskey Park. We did 15,000 at Comiskey with the Polish fighters. So, I've been working with all different types of fighters, and me and Leon been together for 34 years. So I think we got a good thing going, and we're going to continue to
No
go.
doubt about it. All right. So you don't rule out the possibility of Pacquiao winning. This reminded me when I saw.
Don't count him out. I'm just telling
Yeah.
you, don't not count him out. I hear he's been looking really sharp in the gym. And one thing to keep in mind, Barrio started at 122 pounds. He's a welterweight now, but he started at 122 pounds. And he fought Gervonta Davis at 40. And I believe that I really believe that it's going to be a great fight, and Pacquiao could win. I mean, a lot of De La Hoya the other day, and I said he thought Barr was going to win for sure. So there's a lot of guys that think De La Hoya is going to. That Pacquiao is going to win. So I tell the fans, turn on. It's going to be a great pay-per-view. Not only that fight, all the other fights in the card. And don't count Pacquiao out. That's all I'm going to tell you. Okay?
It's
He's
funny
got a
because
hell of a chance.
when Tyson was in these videos leading up to his Jake Paul catastrophe, where he basically stood there like a statue from the middle of the first round on, and people were screaming what a farce this is, and it gets to another topic also. But Tyson looked great in all those gym videos, just like Pacquiao does. I'm watching Pacquiao; he looks the same.
Yeah,
So I'm
one thing
thinking,
is
are we
the
being
gym,
duped
and
by
one
that?
thing is the actual fight. You know that.
Yeah,
But Tyson was 58 years old. When he fought Jake Paul, and an older guy. Durant beat Camacho when he was 45. He got robbed. Okay, and they gave Camacho the decision. So these great fighters, man, they can always have one great night. So I'm just letting you know, don't count him out. He still can punch with both hands, and punching power don't go away. And and I think he's got a hell of a shot. It's going to be a great fight.
all right. Jake Paul, always a topical conversation piece in boxing circles. You've been involved in the game as what we've seen here on the show for over 40 years. But what does he do for you as a boxing promoter? I mean, clearly he's actually done some good. The Katie Taylor Mana Serrano series. I don't know that would have gotten the level of prominence that it did and attention that it did. Now people are really looking forward to a trilogy of women's fights, which you
Yeah.
wouldn't have anticipated. But Jake Paul, can he actually fight? And
I
what do you make of this Chavez Jr. matchup?
Well, first of all, I just think Jake Paul, to me, he's been great for boxing. He's brought a lot of new fans. I mean, here my granddaughters won't even watch my fights, but they'll turn on Jake Paul. What can I tell you? So he's
Right?
brought a lot of the young fans to the fight. He improves every fight. For a kid that's never had any amateur experience, I think he's done well. The one loss he had was against Tyson Fury's brother, which had 9 professional fights. I think the Chavez fight is going to be very interesting. Could be the hardest fight of his career if Chavez gets in shape. But again, I think he's great for the sport. He's done great with the women fighting. I mean, Katie Taylor, whoever thought they would sell out the Garden with Serrano, and he's done a tremendous job. So all I'm going to say, MVP. He's doing a lot of shows at the Caribe Burrell with my partner Mary Pierres. And I think he's been great for boxing. I really do.
All right. Chavez Jr. was always a bit of a mystery. I mean, one of those guys that I would imagine if you were his manager or promoter, you get very frustrated with because he didn't seem to have the same affinity for training that, say, an Arguello or, any of the greats have had. Was he any good, in your opinion, Louis DeCubas, Julio Chavez,
Yeah, well, when you're a son of a
Cesar
legend,
Chavez Jr.?
like Julio Chavez, one of the greatest fighters ever lived. You got, it's a tough, tough to follow on that track, But
Yeah.
he was world champion. I know I one of the losses he had was against one of my guys from Farah, and in Los Angeles. But he's a talented guy. Definitely not like his father. His father's one of the great ones, but I think that I saw him in Anaheim. I mean, Los Angeles for the press conference where I got Dorticles fighting Sudo Ramirez, and he actually looked in great shape. He really looked like he might be taking this seriously. Maybe the guy will take it seriously. I definitely think it's Jake Paul's toughest fight. If he gets by Chavez, that's a lot, to get past the world champion. And but he keeps improving, and he is a strong guy. He's very strong. So, I think it's going to be also a very good fight, probably the best fight Paul has been involved with. And again, been great for boxing.
All right. You have Canelo, of course, coming up against Terence Crawford. How do you see that? If you were a betting man, what do you see happening there?
Well, I got to go with the bigger guy. A good big guy always beats a good little guy. I mean, through the history of boxing, Crawford's a 47 pounder, a great 47 pounder, and Canelo's a great 60 pounder, not 68 pounder. So he's just bigger guy. He's a bigger, stronger guy. He's younger, 3 years younger. Forget about the skull fight. What happened over there? They got ran around the ring. It was tough to get to him. I think with Crawford, it's going to sit a little bit more because he's going to be heavier. And very good fight, but I think the first time that Canelo hit, that's what I think. It's just a bigger guy. He's going to go in the ring, much heavier. I don't even think there's a weight that he can. There's no weight limit on the next day. So I think he's just going to be the bigger, stronger guy.
Has Canelo become a modern day Mayweather? And from a promoting standpoint, obviously he's doing well and making a ton of money, and he's now with the Sheik out there in Saudi Arabia, which is a whole new thing. But is it good for the game that he fought what seemed like just a collection of stiffs, including this skull fight before he got to Crawford? And how would you rate his career overall, like Canelo Alvarez?
Well, he's when you make the kind of money he makes, and he sells 500, 600,000 pay-per-view homes fighting Charlo, Baranga, and Manguia. It's all business. The guy's not going to take a risk. He's making 40 million a fight when he was with PVC. He was making 40 million a fight, fighting these guys, which was an 8-9-1 favorite. And of course, who hurts there is the fans. They want to see Duran, Leonard, Hagler, and Hearns, the big four, fight each other and the best fight the best. But with the pay-per-view numbers he's done, this is business. He's now the deal he signed in Saudi Arabia is over $200 million or something, $250 million. So I mean, just the money's crazy out there now. Turkey, he's put a lot of money into boxing. Another guy I have great respect for. I've been to Saudi. I think he's brought a lot of money to the sport. Made a lot of guys money that couldn't have made that kind of money. So how can I talk bad about the guy? He's brought a lot of money to boxing. He's brought a lot of money to boxing, and fighters are getting paid what they never got paid before. So I can't criticize that. I had Frank Sanchez fight in Saudi Arabia twice. He made 2 great paydays. I had Morrell fight in Los Angeles and the Crawford fight. He made a nice payday. Now I got him fighting on July 12th in Queens, in New York. He's making a nice payday. So I'm not going to talk bad about guys. They're putting, this kind of money into boxing. I'm gonna talk good about them. That's what I'm gonna do.
What's your thought about Eddie Hearn, who of course became very influential at Matchroom and has had any number of champions? For some reason, he seems like he's all right, but I don't know why, Louis. I take great satisfaction in seeing Hearn looking stunned after one of his guys goes down, especially Anthony Joshua for some reason.
Yeah, well, Eddie, I know, and Barry Hearns, his father, the second world champion I had was Robert Daniels from Miami, and yes. I did that fight with Barry Hearns in Paris, France, 1989. So, I know in the family a long time. I think Eddie also is a good, great young promoter, probably one of the best in the game. He's got the zone. I know they had the 5 against Frank Warren and Saudi and have good results. And have good results with Joshua. A lot of the favorites that he has been losing, but that's boxing. He's putting these guys in, and they're losing, you can't criticize the guy. He's also one of the top promoters in the world, and I think he's been also great for boxing.
Is Oscar back on top? It seemed
Oscar's always going to be on top. He's got a great name. He's got a great Mexican stable of fighters. Virgil Ortiz, Sergio Ramirez, and Oscar's good at, and Eric Gomez are great boxing guys as matchmakers. So they're always going to be in the game. These guys have been around a long time, and they know talent, and they're going to be around a long time.
I know you got to run. You got a big meeting. With the WBA president? He's probably waiting.
I'm here in Puerto Rico with my great friend Paco Barcasol, president of WBR. I've known him 40 years, and talking a little boxing and trying to move some of my fighters, in the WBO rankings. What I'm doing,
All right, a couple of last things, real quick. Fight that you're most looking forward to. That's upcoming.
Well, the fight I'm looking the most forward to right now is, of course, I got Dorticos. He's a big underdog, but he's been with me for his first 4-round fight, so I'm looking forward to that. And he's got a puncher's chance, which he can punch. He can knock you out with one shot. And again, I'm excited about July 12th for Morrell. And I got Juanis Taylor is going to be defending his title in August in Orlando. So just moving these guys, keeping them busy, and that's what I got going. And I'm a little, I've got a meeting to go to, but I love to, hang out with you in Miami and do an interview there. Anytime you want, I'm ready for you. Been a great friend, and I'm here,
That's a beautiful thing. All right. And if you could make one fight of all fighters, whether you handle them or not, what would it be? What would the fight be that you would want to see and you would want to be the promoter of?
Well, I got to see the biggest money fight in Fury. I think that's a fight I like to see because you're going to sell 95,000 tickets, and it's going to be, and they're both, seeing their best days. I think it could be a good fight, but I think the public will want to see it.
All right, I'll let you run. Thanks so much for being with
Thank
us,
you so
Louis
much.
DeCubas. Always
All
a
right.
pleasure. We'll catch up again, and sounds like you got a lot of great things going. So thanks so
Thank you,
much
my
for
friend. I
sharing
appreciate it very much. Thank
your
you.
thoughts with us. All right, Louis DeCubas, ladies and gentlemen, with us here on Conversations. And wow, yeah, I mean the guy, treasure chest of Latin fighters, for sure. It's interesting. He mentioned Jose Ribalta and his fight against Mike Tyson. Jose Ribalta, one of the, I believe it was the very first fight I ever called and did blow by blow for. Jose Ribalta was involved. They were having fights at a place called the War Memorial Auditorium in Fort Lauderdale. Boxing historian, extraordinary man. One of the first guys I met when I moved to Miami. I happened to mosey my way to the Fifth Street Gym where a lot of this stuff was happening, including Chris Dundee and Angelo hanging out. And it was a fabled place. It was like only a few others. I mean, I guess you could go Gleason's in New York, the Main Street Gym in Los Angeles, Johnny Tacos out in Las Vegas, and the Fifth Street Gym was right up there. So it was one of those fabled cathedrals of sports and the underside of sports that I always wanted to visit. I pop in there, I meet a guy named Hank Kaplan. He was partners with a gentleman who was going to promote some fights in Fort Lauderdale named Ramiro Ortiz. And the featured fight on the card, very first television bout I did was on like a local cable system, Selkirk Cable in Fort Lauderdale, going out to about 14 people, was Jose Rivalta. And he turned out to be a very good fighter. He did give Tyson a run for his money. Robert Daniels, of course, a light heavyweight champion, or actually was a cruiserweight champ, was, I think, one of the first, if not the first. And this sounds odd because clearly, you would think that Miami and South Florida boxing area, but I believe he was the first born in Miami boxing champion ever to emerge, which seems like it should have happened long before that. But that was early '80s, of course. Louis connected with that. And that David Morrell Benavidez fight was a beauty, and so it's good to hear that they're going to be probably doing it again, and maybe even, as Louis stated, getting involved in a 3-fight trilogy. I'm a little scared for the Manny Pacquiao fans. I love Pacquiao. Saw Pacquiao for the very first time. We talked about this with Jim Lampley when he was on the show. I got called out of desperation by HBO. They were trying to promote a Oscar fight, Oscar De La Hoya, against Javier Castillejo. And nobody had heard of Castillejo. He had no chance in this fight. It was going to be a showcase for Oscar, make a quick payday. And deep on the undercard, probably 3 bouts before the main event, you had Ledwaba and Ledwaba and Lalo Ledwaba, excuse me. And Ledwaba was the second coming of Azuma Nelson, according to everybody. And so I was curious to see this guy. He was undefeated. And he's in there against a guy who was a substitute for his original opponent. And I still remember my friend John Bayruti, who used to write boxing for the L.A. Herald Examiner, which was a great alternative to the L.A. Times in terms of covering the degenerate sports that I loved, horse racing and boxing. Bayruti was very good at this, and he comes up to me because I'd known him from years before, and he says, I really like the Filipino in this fight. And I thought, the Filipino? Who the hell is a Filipino? Sure enough, it was Manny Pacquiao. He had just connected with Freddie Roach, showed up at the Wild Card Gym a few weeks before the fight to start training as a late substitute, and he beats Lalo Ledwaba convincingly, knocks him out, and that was the stuff of which legends were made. A legend was born. He went on to have those great fights with Morales and Barrera, and then, of course, Juan Manuel Marquez and all the other classic battles that he was involved in. Just inducted this past week into the Hall of Fame with our good friend, the commissioner, Randy Gordon. And looks good in these videos. He looks very sharp. I don't know. I think it's deceptive, though. I'm worried that a guy that's been out of the game for 4 years that started to get knocked around a little bit. It wasn't like he was embarrassing himself, but he wasn't quite the same fighter that he was at some of his lower weights. Off the 4-year layoff and maybe in desperate need of cash, as has been implied, I'm a little concerned. I'm going to have to throw my money on Barrios in that fight when it comes up. But a lot of good stuff happening. Interesting to hear a promoter say that, and you would imagine that would be the angle, that Jake Paul is a promoter's dream, that he's actually done a lot of good for boxing, even though it seems like three-quarters of the comments after he fights are people that despise the fact that it's even considered professional boxing. But has a card coming up, and you'll see Katie Taylor and Serrano again in the third part of their trilogy, and many other good fights on the card. So, from a promotional standpoint, for fans of the sport, even though you may have to suffer through a Jake Paul, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. bout, you're still getting some kind of elevation of the sport's focus and the attention that the sport gets because of the fact that this guy is in the ring. All right, thanks to Luis DeCubas for joining us this week on Conversations, and hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm Jeff DeForrest. We'll join you again next week with another edition of the program, and of course, you can catch us every morning here on Bleacher Brothers from 8 to 9 a.m., and all the other outstanding programming available on the Bleacher Brothers site, including our man A.J. Johnson and his crew. They do a tremendous job. All right, we'll see you next time. For Luis DeCubas, I'm Jeff DeForrest. Thanks for tuning in to this week's edition of Conversations.